broadcast deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
We've got a lot of catching up to do.
Hi there, everybody. It's lovely to be with you again.
Over 100 live games in just 6 weeks on Sky Sports. Everything still to play for. Scores to sell. Relegation to avoid. Europe up for grabs. And the titles to win. Upgrade to Sky Sports today. 64 Premier League and 37 EFL games on Sky Sports, 17th of June till 26th of July. Requires Sky Sports Premier League and football packs. See sky.com/sports for details.
On the Bloomberg Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, June 15th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures plunge on fears of a second coronavirus outbreak.
The pace of infections climbs in more than 20 states, including Florida, Texas, and Arizona.
Concerns of a second wave also surface in Beijing, with nearly 100 new cases tied to a produce market.
A warning from Governor Andrew Cuomo: enforce social distancing or prepare to be shut down again. And municipalities are challenged with reforming their police departments. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. More on the baseball labor situation. The Yankees now connected to sign stealing in a playoff and the return of golf.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by SEI. Today's competitive marketplace requires asset managers to become more operationally adept. See how you can transform your business with SEI's global platform at SEIC.com/IMS.
And global stocks are tumbling to start the week. It is 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are down 53 points, Dow futures down 548, and NASDAQ futures down 145. The DAX in Germany is down 1.4%. So is the CAC in Paris. The FTSE 100 down 1.2%. Nikkei 225 in Japan fell 3.5%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong down 2.2%. 10-year Treasury up 7/30 seconds. Yield 0.67%, yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.1% on 75 cents at $35.50 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.7% or $12.40 at $17.24.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1264 against the dollar. The yen 107.30. Nathan.
Karen, the plunge in global stocks comes as evidence continues to show a second wave of coronavirus infections. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Nathan. The rate of new cases continues to rise in Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Washington state. Overall, the pace of infections is climbing in more than 20 states that have reopened businesses. Scott Gottlieb is former head of the Food and Drug Administration. He addressed the outbreak on Face the Nation from CBS, heard right here on Bloomberg Radio.
States like Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, where you see those outbreaks right now, never really reduced the number of cases substantially. They had spread, it was persistent, and now it's flaring up.
In other parts of the country, infections are declining. New York's infection rate has been falling for nearly 6 weeks. The state reported its lowest daily number of deaths since the pandemic began. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. The coronavirus outbreak has seen unemployment soar, with more than 20 million Americans out of work. That figure will improve, but a full rebound can't be expected this year, according to Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan.
Depending on how fast the service sector comes back and people reengage, we're still going to have an elevated level of unemployment, maybe as high, based on my forecast, of 8% or more. And it means that some people won't be able to go back to their old jobs and will have to find new jobs.
Kaplan gave his assessment of the economy on Face the Nation. Over on Fox News, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow offered a more upbeat assessment of the recovery.
I think we can get 20% growth in the second half. The president rebuilt this economy to begin with, as you know. There's no reason why we can't apply the same incentives, lower taxes, lower regulations, better trade deals, so we can rebuild the economy in 2021 and beyond.
Kudlow still expects a V-shaped recovery for the U.S. economy. He also says $600 stimulus checks being sent to some Americans each week will stop as planned on July 31st.
Now, when it comes to prospects for that V-shaped recovery, some analysts are skeptical. David Bloom is head of FX strategy at HSBC.
We heard the Fed, we heard Powell, economists without political agendas who look at things from a global perspective, telling us it's going to take a very long time for the economy to recover. And I do agree that the US will probably recover the fastest and the best, but it's going to take a long time for growth to retain and get back its momentum.
Jerome Powell gets another chance to offer his view on the recovery this week. The Fed chairman delivers his semi-annual monetary policy report to the Senate Banking Committee tomorrow.
Concerns of a second outbreak are also surfacing in Beijing. 80 new infections are being tied to the city's largest fruit and vegetable market. Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie has the very latest from Beijing.
The virus, according to state media, was detected on a chopping board used by a seller of imported salmon, and officials later saying that genome sequencing suggesting that the virus came from Europe, though it's not known yet how it was imported, if indeed it was imported. Authorities saying that at least 10,000 people linked to the market will be tested over the next few days. They've locked down residential areas near the market, and restrictions across the city have been ramped up on the back of this outbreak.
And those new infections come in a city that's home to more than 20 million people.
Fear of a fresh outbreak sent stocks in Asia lower today. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with the details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index had its biggest one-day fall since March 23rd, down some 2.5%. Electronic shares weighed on the Kospi, which closed down by 4.8%, while the won led a decline in EM currencies. In Tokyo, the Nikkei 225 was down by 3.5%, its biggest drop in 2 months as the yen gained on risk aversion. And in China, the CSI 300 was down 1.2% after data showed the economy continued to inch out of the coronavirus slump in May, although retail sales were weaker than expected. In Singapore, Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Julia, thank you. Switching gears now, we have new exclusive reporting that sheds some light on the takedown of Carlos Ghosn. The former head of Nissan and Renault has always said he was set up, and now Bloomberg News has learned there's evidence to support his claim. According to sources and documents tied to the matter, executives at Nissan started a plan to remove Ghosn almost a year before his arrest. Begin more on this Bloomberg News exclusive from Reed Stevenson in Tokyo.
The drumbeat toward his arrest began, initially out of concern over his push to more closely integrate Nissan with Renault. And as time progressed, an investigation was started and then essentially culminated just before Carlos Ghosn's arrest in planning that would essentially sort of map out for Nissan how it would seize the opportunity of removing him to rebalance, redefine its relationship with Renault.
And sources and email correspondence dating back to February of 2018 suggest a methodical campaign to remove Carlos Ghosn.
And it is now 5:07 on Wall Street. Let's get more now on the latest world and national news headlines from Bloomberg's Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Nathan. Beautiful weekend weather and the loosening of some coronavirus restrictions sent crowds to bars, restaurants, and parks over the weekend. And that has New York Governor Andrew Cuomo warning municipalities and businesses that they must continue to enforce social distancing guidelines or he'll shut them down again.
You look at all the other states, it's not hard to figure out what is happening here. It's happened in half the states in the nation. So far, we have been the exception. And we're not going to go back to that dark place.
More commuters are back on the New York City subway. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority says ridership is up 19% in the first week of the city's reopening. New Jersey is transitioning to phase 2 reopening today. Outdoor dining is allowed with some restrictions. Retail stores can reopen, but you have to wear a face covering if you go inside. In Atlanta, prosecutors will decide whether to bring charges against the police officer who shot and killed a black man. The official autopsy says Rayshard Brooks was shot twice in the back outside a fast food restaurant. New York Governor Cuomo says he wants to know how municipalities in New York plan to reform their police departments.
Tell me specifically what you want from your police department. Buffalo, Rochester, tell me exactly what you want your police department to do.
Cities, towns, and regions looking to change how their departments work have until April 1st, 2021 to make those changes for state funding approval. Thousands of marchers dressed in white flooded several blocks around the Brooklyn Museum to support human rights for black transgender people. That rally and silent march coincided with Black Lives Matter demonstrations across the country and the midpoint of Pride Month. And federal reforms may be coming as Senate Republicans are poised to unveil an ambitious package of policing changes. This includes new restrictions on police chokeholds and other practices. That bill is expected to be introduced on Wednesday. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Amy. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Now time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashauer.
All right, good morning, Nathan. Tell us when and where to show up. That was the message from the Baseball Players Association to MLB yesterday after the latest in a long line of rejected proposals. It became clear to the union there would never be an agreement, so baseball has the right to dictate terms for the season as long as players get their full prorated pay. But baseball would then want to limit the number of games. Could be as few as 48, so there would be baseball. There's not that much of it. The season could start in late July. We know the Houston Astros stole signs in 2017, but did the Yankees also? DraftKings filed a lawsuit claiming sign stealing affects its company, and in discovery, a letter was found from Commissioner Rob Manfred to the Yankees regarding using cameras to steal signs. A judge ordered the letter unsealed. The Yankees are fighting in court to prevent that from happening. Golf is back. The Charles Schwab outside of Dallas went to an All-American playoff. Daniel Berger, who birdied on 18 to get into the playoff, won it on the first extra hole when Colin Morikawa bogeyed. 487 COVID-19 tests were taken. All were negative. So Berger on ESPN termed the tournament a success.
Yeah, we had tests when we got on site. We had temperature readings before we got to the course every day. I felt very comfortable with the whole process that the PGA Tour implemented. I think all of the golfers that were here this week felt the same way. Obviously, next week we're going to be doing the same thing, getting tested before we get on site. I think they've got a really good plan in place, and as long as nothing changes, I think we're going to be good to go.
The tour heads now to Hilton Head, South Carolina. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
John, thank you. In other sports news, LSU college football fans will be able to celebrate this year's national championship on their cars. State lawmakers have authorized the creation of a special LSU National Champions license plate that can be used on vehicles in place of regular state-issued tags. It'll cost $51 a year on top of regular fees. The state gets to keep $1 for administrative costs. The remaining $50 goes to LSU, which plans to use that cash for student scholarships. Risk off this morning. S&P futures down 61 points. Dow futures down 625. NASDAQ futures lower by 164 points. Stay with us for an extended conversation with former Gartman letter publisher Dennis Gartman on where the recovery goes from here. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
We're all having to get used to the new normal, and at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal, studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck, and it's new problem solved.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The wait is over. This Wednesday, it's Aston Villa v Sheffield United and Man City v Arsenal in a fantastic restart for the season. And with Now TV, you can watch both games live for just $9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed, it's $9.99.
Game changer. So, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus content streamed via internet. Full terms apply.
Emily Chang.
Shares of Just Eat Takeaway have plunged since announcing it plans to buy Grubhub in an all-stock deal for $7.3 billion, bringing the European food delivery company into the brutally competitive U.S. market. Uber had been in talks to buy Grub, but it didn't happen. Uber shareholder and former chief business officer Emil Michael says Uber made a massive strategic failure in not trying to own U.S. food delivery earlier. He joins us now in an exclusive interview. Emil, how badly do you think Uber needed this, and what position is Uber in now that they didn't get it?
Well, Uber needed it because what they missed really badly by letting go of their lead position in food delivery in 2018 and 19. When I left Uber in 2017, Uber was firmly in the lead ahead of DoorDash and everyone else in food delivery. And that lead was lost in 2018-19, which led to where they were today, which meant they needed potentially the Grubhub asset to regain that lead. So when they lost that to Just Eat yesterday, that meant that with DoorDash really double Uber's market share, Uber Eats' market share in the U.S., and now Grubhub being an asset owned by Just Eats, that became sort of problematic.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and European stocks are sinking to a 3-week low. U.S. stock index futures are sliding as evidence of a second virus wave dashes hopes of a quick economic recovery. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down about 62 points. Dow futures down 621. NASDAQ futures down 160. The DAX in Germany is down 1.6%. CAC in Paris down 1.5%. And the FTSE 100 down 1.4%. 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds, yield 0.67%, yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.9% or 69 cents at $35.58 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.8% or $14.10 at $17.23.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1256 against the dollar, British pound 1.2541, and the yen 107.30. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The rate of new coronavirus cases is on the rise across the country, particularly in places that have reopened for business. Bloomberg's John Tucker has more now in this live report. John.
Yeah, and Amy, more than 20 U.S. states are seeing a pickup in cases. Florida had a 2.7% jump. Arizona cases climbed 3.6%. Texas, Washington State, and California are also seeing increases. Meantime, New York recorded its lowest daily number of deaths since the pandemic began. And elsewhere, China racing to control a new outbreak in Beijing that's reached nearly 100 infections. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, thank you, John. And Atlanta has become the new focus of the nationwide Black Lives Matter protests after a 27-year-old black man was fatally shot by 2 white police officers. The medical examiner there has listed the cause of death as homicide. Senate Republicans this week will unveil a package of policing changes, including new restrictions on police chokeholds and other practices. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Amy. It's 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and we're pleased to get the week started this morning with Dennis Gartman, economist and former publisher of the Gartman Letter. Although if you're long equities, it's probably not feeling like a good start to the week here with concern about a second wave of coronavirus infection now appearing to permeate risk markets. Dennis, are we poised for potentially for a second sell-off here, a la February and March?
Well, we've already started a sell-off. It's rather substantive. What happened on Thursday was very serious. A nice rebound on Friday, although on very light volume, and then overnight the numbers of coronavirus circumstances around the country and around the world being deleterious to share prices. So let us hope. If you cast depending upon the width of one's pencil as you're casting trend lines across charts, there is some hope, some possibility that the overnight lows may be the lows. I have my very serious doubts. I think there's more than just fear over rising coronavirus circumstances. I think there's concern over the presidential elections, the possibilities that the Democrats may actually sweep the House and the Senate. I think that's weighing upon people. I'd like to think, I'd like to hope, I'd like to believe that the lows are being put in, but I'm short the stock market. I trade only for my own account. I came in short overnight. I am going to add to it this morning on any bounce that we got. We've gotten about a 250 Dow point rally in the last 2 hours, so that we're off the lows. But let us hope, for the sake of the country, that the trend lines that can be cast on the charts hold. I have my very serious doubts.
As you mentioned, doubts including political risk here. I want to focus first off on the potential for a second wave of coronavirus infection, because it's starting to revive that debate over whether we see a V-shaped recovery in this economy or a U or a swoosh. We've heard all the different metaphors over the last couple of months here. What's your view at this point?
There will be no V-shaped recovery. That's just nothing but hope and the triumph of hope over reality. That's not going to happen. I said 2 weeks ago that we're going to have a relatively strange-looking W-shaped recovery, with the highs on each rally in the economy being less than the previous rally. I think this is going to stretch out for several years. It's going to take a long time for people to forget the seriousness of the COVID-19 circumstances, and it's going to take a much longer period of time if we have a political consequence derived from this. So I am not on the school of thought that there will be a V-shaped recovery. Yes, we'll get a bounce in the GDP numbers in the third quarter, but only because the decline in the second quarter has been so substantive, almost depressionary in orientation, that you'll get a bounce, but it'll be a very slight bounce, so it won't be much of a bounce. And if you take something down 40% and bounce back 30%, you're not anywhere near the highs.
Tell me what data you're looking at that gives you the view that we could be in for a multi-year W.
Psychology more than anything. I really think markets at the margin are. I've always said that markets change when the margin changes. When the last 2% of the buyers become sellers, markets change, and that's really psychology. All of the data Retail sales look terrible to be kind, if you want to say that. Bank loans seem to be bouncing, but very, very marginally. Steel production is not ramping up. Automobile production looks ugly and getting worse. I mean, there's just, one is hard pressed to find any piece of economic data that you can put your hands on and say, look, things are turning much for the better. Let us hope that the monetary authorities continue to be expansionary. They have no choice. The banks, the Fed's balance sheet has to be expanded on a continuous basis to new highs. That's probably the only beneficial circumstance that I can put my hands on at this point. All of the data looks awful and probably is going to continue to get worse as the year progresses.
We're speaking with Dennis Gartman, former publisher of the Gartman Letter. We heard from Larry Kudlow over the weekend, the White House economic advisor. He's advising against extending unemployment insurance benefits, the special benefit that's been put in place during this pandemic. What would you like to see fiscal support, the fiscal side, look like to at least cushion the blow from this recession?
Larry's an old friend, and I have to. It's terrible if I have to argue with Larry, but he's been very open about expecting to see a V-shaped rebound. I just don't think that's going to happen. I tend to be farther to the right philosophically and economically than most people, but in the environment that we have upon us right at this point, we need the Congress to pass legislation, huge amounts of infrastructure spending, and although there are problems with the PPP that we have right now, some people are actually making more money being unemployed than they were when they were working. I'm not sure that we have to that we should discontinue that. I think that circumstances are such that a continuation is required, and the monetary authorities have to continue to be expansionary. So I'm actually on the side where most people would say you sound like a Democrat. At this point, I think, given the circumstances, expansion and large amounts of infrastructure spending are required and necessary and have to be implemented. So I'm looking to Congress to take over the helm, and I'm not sure that they want. I'm not sure that they shall be able to do so. I think there'll be too many arguments from the far right saying we've already done enough to be expansionary. I think we need to be more so.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring the idea of infrastructure spending back on the table. You hear that every once in a while, the idea of adding more infrastructure spending, but it doesn't seem like it's getting that much traction. As you're mentioning, what are the consequences if we don't see the kinds of policy prescriptions that you're looking for here?
An even worse economy extending for years into the future. That's my big fear. And there are times when you have to look at the reality of the circumstance and say, look, perhaps being a fiscal conservative at times is the wise thing, but so there are times when being a fiscal conservative would be ill-advised. This is one of those times when being a fiscal conservative, I think, would be ill-advised. Right now, you have to throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. Yes, there were problems with the previous legislation because it came out so fast, and yes, indeed, there are people who, as I just said, make more money now than they were when they were unemployed or when they were employed. That's got to be fixed, but to do away with that sort of legislation completely and to say let's let the economy do what it wants to do on its own, I think at this point it would be an ill-advised decision on the part of the government of consequence.
And of course, we've seen extraordinary support on the monetary policy side from the Federal Reserve. What effect do you see that having on Treasury yields going forward?
Well, I'm short the long end of the curve and have been for about a month and a half, but I may be wrong. I thought that eventually the expansionary policies would be inflationary, and I would have thought that by now we'd start to see some inflationary pressures showing up in the numbers, but they're not. I may have to cover that short position, but the Fed has no choice other than to continue to expand its balance sheet. Yes, there are attacks because under normal circumstances, and these are far from normal. Under normal circumstances, that would be highly inflationary. I am a monetarist at balance, but there are times when you have to throw your old theories out. This may be one of those times. There are deflationary pressures out there that seem to be far more extant than I would have thought possible. So I had been short of the long end of the curve. I'm probably still going to remain somewhat short of the long end of the curve, but I'm going to reduce that short position this morning.
Why do you think we're not seeing inflationary pressure from the policy moves from the Fed?
Because you're not getting wage pressure the way that normally you would get. There's the process of globalization, which is going to be changed dramatically. We're going from a globalist policies around the world to more nationalist policies around the world, and eventually that shall have wage pressures on the upside. But right now, you're still bringing Chinese into the market that have low wages, Mexicans into the market that have low wages, Malaysians with low wages, Indonesians with low wages. It's the wage pressure that is keeping the inflationary circumstances from becoming problematic.
In the time we have left, I want to ask you about where the labor market goes from here. Of course, we've seen tens of millions of jobs lost through this pandemic. Do you see many of these jobs coming back, particularly on the low-income side?
I'm afraid not. I'm afraid, just to be off-the-cuff commentary, we probably had 25% too many restaurants in the United States given the economic circumstances that were prevailing, and probably 25% of the restaurants that were extant will not be returning. You're probably those sorts of things. The number of hotels around the country will probably never get back to the numbers that we had last September, October, November, December. So those wages, those jobs are probably not coming back. There'll be a bounce, but they're not going to go back to the levels that existed a while ago. The number of automobile workers are probably not going to be returned. The number of airline employees will probably not be returned. So I'm afraid that the unemployment numbers are going to look awful for a long period of time going forward. I hate to say that. I'd like to be far more optimistic about things, but I think that's the harsh reality that we have to deal with.
We only have about 30 seconds left here, Dennis. What do you expect to hear? What do you need to hear from Chairman Powell this week when he goes before lawmakers?
I don't think he's going to make any more changes than what he said. I think he's done yeoman's work. I honestly think he's one of the better central bankers that we've had. I think he's done a wonderful job of explaining what he's going to do, what he's been doing, what they are going to continue to do into the future. He will continue to say they will do what they need to do, and he will he will make certain that Congress understands that now that the pressure is upon Congress to come up with infrastructure spending. They've done what they can do. They will remain expansionary, and they will continue to add to their balance sheet, but they're going to put the pressure upon Congress to come across.
Dennis Gardman, thanks for the extended time this morning. Really appreciate it. Dennis Gardman is the former publisher of the Gardman Letter. Karen.
Right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:29 on Wall Street, and we're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you a look at some of the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are tumbling as evidence continues to show a second wave of coronavirus infections. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Karen. The rate of new infections continues to rise in Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Washington State as economies across the country reopen for business. Scott Gottlieb is former head of the Food and Drug Administration. He addressed the outbreak on Face the Nation from CBS, heard on Bloomberg Radio.
What we're seeing is that parts of the country that had persistent spread, that never really crushed the epidemic, now have flare-ups in the cases, surging cases as they reopen.
At the same time, some states are seeing declines. In New York, the infection rate has been falling for nearly 6 weeks. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Meantime, China is racing to control a new outbreak tied to Beijing's largest fruit and vegetable supplier. That's led to nearly 100 infections. Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie has the very latest from Beijing.
Authorities saying that at least 10,000 people linked to the market will be tested over the next few days. They've locked down residential areas near the market, and restrictions across the city have been ramped up on the back of this outbreak.
Those new infections come in a city that is home to more than 20 million people. Until now, China's avoided significant flare-ups in major metro areas.
Meantime, economic data out of China show a slight recovery in the month of May. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis has more from Hong Kong.
Industrial output rose 4.4% year-on-year. That was stronger than last month, but shy of projections of 5%. Retail sales minus 2.8%, worse than a prediction of 2.3%. The data suggests that China is slowly edging toward recovery. Home prices rose in May at the fastest pace in 6 months. New home prices increasing about 0.5%. And the urban jobless rate ticked down to 5.9%. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thanks, Brian. And finally, we have new exclusive reporting that sheds some light on the takedown of Carlos Ghosn. The former head of Nissan and Renault has always said he was set up. Now, Bloomberg News has learned there's evidence to support his claim. According to sources and documents tied to the matter, executives at Nissan started a plan to remove Ghosn almost a year before his arrest. We'll have more on that story coming up in about 15 minutes right here on Bloomberg Radio.
And futures are falling this morning. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down about 57 points. Dow futures down 572. NASDAQ futures down 150. The DAX in Germany's down 1.4%. 10-year Treasury up 8/32, yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.25% on 82 cents at $35.42 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 1.1% or $18.50 at $17.19 an ounce. The euro 1.1253 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It is 5:33 on Wall Street. Now let's bring in Amy Morris for a check of what else is going on around the world. Amy?
Thank you, Nathan. Nice weather, loosening coronavirus restrictions, leading to large crowds showing up outside bars and restaurants over the weekend. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo warns he'll take action against places that don't enforce social distancing.
Utah, Oregon had to reverse their reopening plan. Before I reverse a statewide position, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to reverse it in those areas that are not in compliance with the rules.
Cuomo says he has received 25,000 complaints that businesses aren't enforcing social distancing rules. More people are taking the subway, but ridership is still way down. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority says the city's subway carried an average of 877,000 riders. That is up 19% in the city's first week of reopening, but way down from the daily high of 6 million riders set back in February. Outdoor dining is allowed in New Jersey as Phase 2 restrictions kick in today. Customers can shop inside retail stores, but you still have to wear your face mask. The weekend shooting death of a black man by white police officers has refocused Black Lives Matter demonstrations in Atlanta. The official autopsy says Rayshard Brooks was shot twice in the back, and his cause of death is listed as a homicide. Governor Cuomo says he is telling cities, towns, and regions to come up with their own plans for police reform.
Come to a table, the mayor, the council, the activists, the protesters, the public safety experts, the police department, and redesign it so the relationship is one of trust and respect.
They have until April 1st of 2021 to make the changes for state funding approval. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio addressed the growing unrest in that city, saying he will shift funding.
We'll put real resources into that because it works and it's necessary. We will take resources, take finances from policing and put it into youth services and social services where we go at the root of the problem.
De Blasio took part in the New Hope Christian Fellowship virtual worship service yesterday. And watch for a federal plan to come from the Senate this week as Republican lawmakers work on a package of policing changes, including new restrictions on police chokeholds and other practices. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Amy. 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
All right, Nathan. Tony Clark heads up the Baseball Players Association. He said yesterday that any further dialogue between his union and MLB management would be futile. They have waved the white flag when it comes to getting an agreement. The union statement says to MLB, tell us when and where to show up and tell us of your plan by today. Commissioner Rob Manfred can do that as long as the players get full prorated pay. So MLB will try to limit the number of games, perhaps as few as 48. Both sides in the dispute may end up filing grievances against the other. As of now, the NBA restart is on for next month, but clearly some players like the Lakers' Dwight Howard are having doubts, not only for health reasons, some feel in the wake of the protests it's not the right time to play. 30 years ago, Jay Berger was a top American tennis player. He was ranked 7th in the world. Yesterday, Fort Worth, Texas, his son Daniel emerged from a crowded leaderboard, won the Charles Schwab Golf for the playoff. It was the first tournament played since March. Berger went on ESPN to talk about golf without fans.
Yeah, obviously a little different not having spectators out there, but, still a lot on the line, so a lot of pressure. But, overall it was a fantastic event. I think the PGA Tour did a great job, and just really happy to be back out here playing golf again.
It'll be interesting to see the ratings, a non-major tournament, but provided those at home finally, something live to watch. Christian Hackenberg was the ultimate NFL draft bust, highly regarded quarterback coming out of Penn State. The Jets took him in the second round in 2016. He bounced around the NFL, never took a single snap in a real game, and now Hackenberg says he's going to try professional baseball. As a high school pitcher, he had a 7 ERA. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nate?
Thanks, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report. Here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
New York hotel owners and a hotel workers union are battling over how to implement safety protocols that both sides see as a necessary step to luring tourists back. The New York Hotel and Motel Trades Council is circulating a new proposal, but owners don't like some union demands that would increase their labor expenses. Travelers have yet to return in significant numbers to New York's Chinatown. Few white-collar workers are making the trip downtown because the city is only in its early stage of reopening. Overall, the effect on Chinatown seems tougher than on many parts of the area's go-to places. New Jersey has won a court order blocking Asbury Park from allowing indoor dining. The state filed a lawsuit after the seaside city said restaurants could seat patrons starting today. That will not happen. New Jersey elected officials and small business owners have been challenging Murphy's latest shutdown guidelines. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
Thanks, Ed. 5:38 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for WFLA in Orlando, I'm reporting that the gym chain 24-Hour Fitness has filed for bankruptcy.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KRLD in Dallas. A local brick business is hit with social media disinformation.
I'm Roger Hearing on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the reopening of non-essential shops in England.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting investors are spooked by a resurgence of COVID-19 cases in Florida and other states that are reopening their economy.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting the number of public charging points for electric cars jumped 60% last year.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. Now, some other stories we're following. BP is anticipating the pandemic will have a long-term impact on energy demand. The company's announcing billions of dollars in write-offs and impairments after reducing its price assumptions. BP's second quarter charges could be as much as $17.5 billion. And IKEA is reportedly in talks to return coronavirus aid granted by the U.S. and 8 other countries. According to the Financial Times, the furniture retailer is recovering more quickly than expected. IKEA tells FT all but 23 of its stores have reopened, and sales are getting a boost from pent-up demand. The latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now with a cover on the great disconnect between stock prices and earnings. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go and listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news from your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just visit youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. S&P futures are down 58 points. Dow futures lower by 587. NASDAQ futures down 159 points. 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds. Yield 0.67%. 2-year yield 0.18%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon N.A. Member FDIC.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, and our board awards community grants from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you have to use public transport, from today you must now wear a face covering at all times. Avoid peak hours and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunningham to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
On Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
An Atlanta police officer was fired, another placed on administrative duty following the resignation of Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields, who stepped down after the death of Rayshard Brooks sparked a new wave of protests in Atlanta. Attorney for the Brooks family, Justin Miller.
His back was turned to the officer when the officer shot him and when the bullets entered his body, which is very problematic because regardless of what else happened that day, him fleeing should have been something that the officers should have taken as a way out of the situation so that he could have lived and the officers could have continued with their day as well.
Police in Tennessee say the 27-year-old daughter of country singer Hank Williams Jr. has been killed in a highway accident. Catherine Williams Dunning was the driver of an SUV that was towing a boat when it crossed the median and rolled over in the weekend accident. I'm John Trout.
Pandemic information is coming at you so quickly, it's hard to react, never mind plan.
How bad do you think it's going to get?
How much more cutting do you need to do?
Here's help. Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update's brought to you by SEI. Challenges highlight one's character, partnership, and resilience. At SEI, they act as one community with their clients. Go to SEIC.com/banks. And European stocks are sinking to a 3-week low. U.S. stock index futures sliding as evidence of a second virus wave dashed hopes of a quick economic recovery. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down about 54 points. Dow futures down 546. NASDAQ futures down 146. The DAX in Germany is down 1.2%. 10-year Treasury up 7/32, yield 0.67%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.9% or 69 cents at $35.58 a barrel. COMEX gold down 1.1% or $19.50 at $17.80 an ounce. The euro 1.1246 against the dollar. The yen 107.34. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Thank you, Karen. Some places across the country that have started reopening for business are also starting to see a jump in coronavirus cases. Bloomberg's John Tucker has more now in this live report. John.
And Amy, more than 20 U.S. states are seeing a pickup in cases. Florida had a 2.7% jump. Arizona cases climbed 3.6%. Texas, Washington State, and California are also seeing increases. Meantime, New York recorded its lowest daily number of deaths since the pandemic began. And elsewhere, China is racing to control a new outbreak in Beijing that's reached nearly 100 infections. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, thank you, John. This as New York Governor Andrew Cuomo warns that cities and businesses that don't continue to enforce social distancing and other measures risk being shut down again. And Atlanta has become the new focus of the nationwide Black Lives Matter protests after a 27-year-old black man was fatally shot by 2 white police officers. The medical examiner has listed the cause of death as homicide. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thank you. It is 5:49 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. The long saga of former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn has taken a new turn this morning. A chain of email correspondence has come to light that could add evidence to his claim that his arrest and takedown for financial misconduct were all a setup. For more on this, we're joined by Bloomberg Executive Editor for Global Business, Brian Bremner. Good to have you with us this morning, Brian. So tell us what's new here about the information just uncovered.
So what's new is that we were able to get access to some emails, documents, and then interviews with people with direct knowledge of the year kind of leading up to Carlos Ghosn's arrest. And what these documents show is a pretty focused campaign to remove him, to dethrone him. And it seemed to have a lot to do with the Nissan-Renault relationship. There was a lot of unhappiness on Nissan's side about the influence that Renault had in that relationship. And Carlos Ghosn, during 2018, wanted to intensify that relationship, much to the chagrin of Nissan executives. And what we discovered through this reporting is that there was very much a campaign to remove him so they could rebalance the relationship. Now, the financial allegations are still out there. This article doesn't really, say one way or another whether those are legitimate or not. I mean, that would take a trial of some sort in Japanese court. And as we know, Carlos Ghosn fled Japan late last year for Lebanon, and the Japanese government is trying to bring him back. But it's going to be a very difficult process because there's no extradition treaty between the two countries.
Right. So who was behind this apparent campaign? Who are the main players here?
Well, I mean, one executive stands out, Hari Nada, who is a lawyer by training, and a lot of the emails that we uncovered involves him, talking about his concern about the relationship, the advantages of Ghosn being out of the picture. We know that he cooperated with the prosecutors. He led an internal investigation against Carlos Ghosn. He's still at the company, very much a major figure there.
I was going to ask where Hari Nada is now. I mean, how did his efforts lead up to this takedown?
Well, he personally led an internal investigation into the financial side of this. which is interesting because it also implicated the former CEO Saikawa, who's since left the company, and there was some other bad behavior, including with Mr. Nada himself, that was uncovered in this investigation. But he has a cooperation agreement with the Tokyo prosecutors. So, yeah, that's kind of the position that he's in right now.
All right, we have about 30 seconds left here. As you mentioned, there are still the financial misconduct accusations against Carlos Ghosn while he's still in Lebanon. I mean, what are the chances that those allegations ever make it into a court of law?
They're very, very low. However, there was another executive that was arrested with Mr. Ghosn, Greg Kelly, and he's still in Japan. And his trial is coming up in a few months. So in a weird way, that might be kind of a proxy for some of the Ghosn allegations, because there are some similarities there.
It's a fascinating story, and listeners can read much more about it on Bloomberg.com. Bloomberg executive editor for Global Business, Brian Bremner, with us this morning. Karen?
Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Law Report. It is brought to you by American Arbitration Association. Business disputes are inevitable. Resolve faster with the American Arbitration Association, the global leader in alternative dispute resolution for over 90 years. More at adr.org. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The White House Regulatory Office has completed its review of final rules on how companies can qualify for a tax deduction from goods made in the U.S. and sold overseas. Obamacare customers could receive refunds earlier than usual this year. Enforcement of the health insurance premium rebate rules was relaxed because of COVID-19. The online stationery and craft marketplace Minted has been sued in a class action in California over a massive data breach that was revealed last month.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story. We're watching. A Manhattan federal judge wants to know why U.S. prosecutors are looking to drop a sanctions violation case against an Iranian banker who was already convicted. In March, the defendant was found guilty of helping to funnel $115 million to Iranian entities. For more on the unusual case, June Grasso speaks to Bloomberg legal reporter Gris Dolmich.
Despite getting a guilty conviction, the prosecution is trying to drop the charges?
Yeah, highly unusual move. They asked for what is called a null prosequi, which essentially would just eliminate the case, saying that basically the likelihood of continued litigation over the suppression of evidence would not be in the interest of justice to continue to pursue the case. And that prompted Mr. Sauter's attorneys to ask the judge to not grant that request and instead grant their request for a new trial, throw out the verdict, and then dismiss the indictment against them. They say that another government agency could consider this a judgment of conviction and that could potentially lead to a deportation.
But what was their reason for all of a sudden saying that we got a conviction, but we're dropping the charges? That's so odd.
It's very unusual. It brings to mind the case of Ted Stevens, the former Alaska Republican senator who was convicted and later had all the charges tossed because of kind of similar violations of disclosure of evidence that was potentially exculpatory. And we really don't have a lot of answers from the government right now as to why they've decided to do this. But the judge in the case really wants to know what's going on. And she asked them to explain. She wants to know the reasoning behind the decision. She says it raises serious concerns about the conduct of the government, and pretty interesting that she wants to know not only what the known misstatements were, but what steps they're taking in response to handling the case. And she wants to know the names of the prosecutors and supervisors who are involved in the decision-making.
This sounds a lot like the Justice Department dropping the charges against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The judge there also wanted to know about the prosecutors and, why the line prosecutors weren't the ones that were involved in dropping the charges.
Yes, and others have made parallels to that case as well. The prosecutors here have been ordered to respond by next week. So expect to hear their response in more detail on their explanation for what is going on. And it's certainly possible the judge could hold a hearing and, severely question them about their decision to make this.
And that's Bloomberg legal reporter Chris Dolmetsch speaking to June Grasso. Catch more of that interview, plus analysis of the latest legal news, by listening to the Bloomberg Law Show at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Futures this morning are falling. S&P futures down 48 points. Dow futures down 479. NASDAQ futures down 125. And the 10-year Treasury up 7/32, yield 0.67%. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you have to use public transport, from today you must now wear a face covering at all times. Avoid peak hours and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Newlywed to newborn. Ordering out to tucking in. Dream car to driveway. Isn't it nice when things arrive quicker than expected? Enter your location into our digital new car locator and it instantly tells you if the BMW you want is available nearby. So it'll be with you quicker than you might think. Search BMW New Car Locator today.
Now more than ever, the world needs people with purpose. The frontline saviors and the backroom heroes. People supporting our communities and making sure no one gets left behind. As the original ethical bank, we've always believed in the power of we. And today, our customer donation fund is supporting 55 of our customers' local projects to continue their amazing work in communities across the UK. The Cooperative Bank. For people with purpose.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, June 15th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures plunge on fears of a second coronavirus outbreak.
The pace of infections climbs in more than 20 states, including Florida, Texas, and Arizona.
Concerns of a second wave also surface in Beijing, with nearly 100 new cases tied to a produce market.
A warning from Governor Andrew Cuomo: enforce social distancing or prepare to be shut down again. And municipalities are challenged with reforming their police departments. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. More on the baseball labor situation. The Yankees now connected to sign stealing in a playoff in the return of golf.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Global stocks are tumbling to start the week. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 48 points. Dow futures down 483. NASDAQ futures down 125. The DAX in Germany is down 1%. CAC in Paris down 0.8%. And the FTSE 100 down 1%. Nikkei 225 in Japan fell 3.5%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong down 2.2%. 10-year Treasury up 7/32, yield 0.67%, yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oils down 1.5% or 54 cents at $35.72 a barrel. COMEX gold down 1.2% or $19.90 at $17.40 an ounce. The euro at 1.1251 against the dollar. The yen 107.30. Nathan.
Karen, the plunge in global stocks comes as evidence continues to show a second wave of coronavirus infections. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. The rate of new cases continues to rise in Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Washington State. Overall, the pace of infections is climbing in more than 20 states that have reopened for business. Scott Gottlieb is former head of the Food and Drug Administration.